בקבוק ב-800 שקל וויסקי.
All right, so hi everyone. Welcome to the Collider Academy weekly meeting. We have a few guests here from both Collider and some friends and partners. And today we're going to talk about the Arweave ecosystem. Just a few words on Collider Academy. So one of our goals is trying to educate Israel and educate the Israeli community about Web3 and the protocols and startups in this area. And we welcome anyone who wants to learn more about this area to join us. We're doing these meetings once in 2 or 3 weeks about different topics in Web3. Just to note that this meeting will be recorded. We're not planning to publish it anywhere, but we might at some point, so just be aware of that. And I think we can start. So in the next 1 hour and a half, we're going to talk about Arweave. Arweave is one of the interesting protocols, L1s, infrastructure layers in Web3 right now. And I think, let's start from the beginning. So the agenda is going to be like, why do we need Arweave? What is Arweave? How does it work? We're going to pinpoint the use cases that are being used today, kind of go through the ecosystem, and then I'm going to present like my personal thesis about like decentralized computer thesis. We can discuss a bit about that. Feel free, to jump in if you have any comments. This is an open discussion, so we have a lot to cover, but I think we can also, we wanted to have some healthy discussion along the way. When I built the lecture, I had to think of what should I focus on, and now we've had a lot of technical aspects, and not everyone here know all the technicals, so I'll try to be brief. I think there's a few slides that are going to be very, very technical, and you guys some might lose me on that. But then I'm going to come back to the use cases and thing that everyone can understand. So the year is 2028. This is a headline from the Daily News, and it says shutting down Uniswap. All right, Uniswap, the leading exchange for digital Web3 assets, which is worth over $300 billion, will no longer be allowed to use any of the public cloud infrastructure of the largest cloud providers, AWS and Azure. So this is the headline from, 6-7 years from now. And as all of you know, the back end of Web3 and all of the decentralized that we're seeing is based on public blockchain infrastructure, right? So decentralized, you have these global computers, it's global, no one can shut it down. But the front end we're engaging with is on private infrastructure, such as AWS and Azure. And as we're seeing today with Apple, that is not allowing any Web3 or crypto apps being listed on the app stores, like any app that has internal crypto payments in it, is not allowed basically on the app store. So this kind of process can happen as well, on private companies that are basically hosting most of the traffic we're using on the web. And now the year is back to 2021, and I took this quote from Naval. This is this guy, I don't know him, but Dave Troy, he kind of said, the crypto attack on the dollar, he was very, very aggressive towards crypto. It's an attack on the dollar, it's an attack on the US state. And then Naval said, it was very funny, enumerates with pitchfork and torches, rallying to stop the free practice of mathematics. So we're seeing these early signs of trying to censor stuff, and crypto Web3, it's in the middle of this big, basically battle between different forces that each, try to pull it towards a different direction. And that's why we kind of need Arweave. So that is the general theme around that. And Arweave is a permanent storage blockchain. And I'm going to explain in a minute how it solves the problem that I just talked about. So it was founded in 2017, and it was part of the Techstars Berlin Accelerator. And it raised an initial token sale of about $9 million. It went on mainnet mid of 2018. It raised, in November 2019, it raised about $5 million from A16Z, Union Square Venture Multicoin, like tier 1 funds in crypto. And then it raised another one during March from the same investors. And
just token sale?
Yeah, it's just token sale during November and March. There might be some equity portion. I'm not sure. Like I know they bought tokens, but but they probably have some equity stake as well. And 2020 and 2021, just the usage just exploded. So today they have more than 12 million transactions per month, and they're storing about 30 terabytes. So the idea about Arweave, if you want to really think about it in a generalized approach, it's a decentralized disk. It stores like it's a centralized network, and it will store a lot of data for good. Like you can't, once something is on Arweave, you cannot delete it. It's very sophisticated structure to put some any kind of data and large chunks of data on the network. Reminds maybe of BitTorrent, things we've seen as kids. And that allows you to be able to store data forever. I think Leo David is waiting at so the motivation for storing data forever, one is censorship, which we just discussed. And the two other use cases, which are more long-term, that's kind of the vision that Arweave came with, is you can have high credibility over time because centralized storage is mutable, you can change that. And you don't have to take any public infrastructure that can hold data like for a very long time, and when I'm saying like 50, 100 years. And why should you need it? So the internet is only 30 years old. It's only been a commercial since the 90s. And when you kind of think about decades to come and how can you store stuff that will not be changed and how can the history, be saved in a very robust way. So Arweave is a kind of infrastructure that allows that. And you have the picture of the Library of Alexandria, which is it was a library in ancient Egypt, I think 200 before BC. It was burned, like this was the idea of the Library of Alexandria, like being the world library, but it was burned down. And that's from Arweave website, I think. Like they're using the same narrative. And the challenges around building a decentralized storage network is that the classic architecture of blockchain is not designed to store a lot of data. And those of us who use blockchain, like, and even day to day, all of us know it's a big problem. So if you want to put more data on Ethereum, you have to increase that. That's on the right here. You think you have to have these larger blocks, so less gas limit, and you need more disk space and more time between transactions, and you need better hardware, and then you don't have the decentralization because the hardware requirements are too heavy. But when you think about if you are planning a decentralized storage network, it doesn't make sense that every computer on the network stores the whole data. You can't build that and that's the structure of blockchain. Blockchains, every node has everything, right? But you can't have every node has like thousands of petabytes of data. It doesn't make sense, so you have to somehow pass around that. And you have to do it in a competitive way, because if it will cost $1,000 to store 1 gig, no one will use it. So you have to think of a way to build a decentralized network where it's competitive in pricing, and no one node stores everything. So Ethereum, if you currently have an Ethereum node, you need to store about 1 terabyte. That's as of today. And Arweave today, it's about
I want to say something about just the Ethereum node. You don't actually need to run an archive node that is 1 terabyte.
That's a full node. Not it's not an archive. I think archive node is much larger.
Yeah. Okay.
The archive node stores all of the states, and that's in Arweave today we have about 30 terabytes, which is it's nothing. Like if you think, I'm not sure about the number of how much data is stored, but like it's very small. It's like a few computers, but it's already about 30x an Ethereum node. And the first 10 terabytes took them about 3 years to get to. The second took them about 3 months, and the last took them 1 month. So we were seeing this exponential growth in usage, most of it this year.
Do you know what kind of data is being stored there?
Yes, we're going to show that. But it has to do with NFTs on Solana. Like Solana did an integration with NFTs, and all of the NFTs on Solana today are stored on Arweave. We're going
Like the image themselves,
Yes.
which is like the gap that people are saying in Ethereum, that
Yeah.
they only have the token, but what happens if the image disappears?
Yes,
They're
we're
looking
going
for a
yeah.
link and they
Yes, I think there's someone waiting in the. Yeah, exactly that. We're going to show exactly that when we're going to talk about use cases. So how does it work? And we're going to get a bit technical for about 5 minutes. So the user comes, he's paying with Arweave token, AR, he's paying it to a virtual endowment fund. And then you have these miners. Each miner can choose which pieces of data that is stored on the network. And the more data he stores, the more funds he's getting from the endowment fund. So we have this financial mechanism which incentivizes basically computers, nodes, miners to store big chunks of data. And it works in the way that if you have something that is stored very little, like you have just a few copies of a picture, so you have larger incentives like to store the picture. And that's how you kind of propagate the data around the network in a way that, you know, you have a lot of replications of each piece of data. And if you think about it,
it's a whole replication or they fractionalize it?
Everything, like the whole piece of data, it's every piece of data you upload is a chunk of data, and that chunk doesn't matter how big it is, like maybe 5 megabytes or 1 G. It's replicated, so it's not fragmented. It's a good question. Like I haven't thought about it, but that's a good question. I'm not sure. What would you do if you know we have a lot of like a very big piece of data?
So it's proof of work also.
Yes. I'm going to. It's also proof of work, and it's a blockchain structure, which we're going to show in a minute.
So today, how many replicates in average there are for every piece of data?
So there are 1,000 nodes for Arweave today, which is not a lot. Like on Ethereum, you have you have 10,000 nodes, and you have a lot of like lighter nodes. So I'm guessing the maximum number is 1,000 right now. Yeah, it's a question of how many nodes you need to have like full decentralization, and no one can shut it down. I think it's still like we have a slide on nodes. We're hoping we can get to it, but the question of how much nodes do you need for it to be like super robust? It's not where like 1,000 is not enough, but I think in 10,000 it can be like very very hard to touch it in the sense of someone shutting it down.
And then in terms of the typical use case, it's mostly used for backup. Like it's not for like live access to data, right?
It can be actually.
The
Yes.
performance could be.
Yes. It can be. It's still like not like it's very complicated network, and it's still not robust enough like to serve live data and stuff. But I think it will be. Like I'll touch that as well. Idan, do you want to?
Yeah, I think like kind of like IPFS and Arweave and all these things, they're like it's to store data in a decentralized way, so anyone from everywhere can access it. So it's not can be censored.
They have a unique angle. They said permanent data. I
Yeah.
remember when he pitched this idea. I think there are videos on YouTube showing him saying basically, I want to fix journalism. I want to have articles stored forever.
Yeah.
And he didn't mention like any integration to blockchain. And the first major use case was the NXM, wrapped NXM contract that was just in order to make sure that forever you can always trade one wrapped NXM to NXM. And no one thought about it. Like it's not an article, right? And I think since then they understand that there is a demand also from that world. They didn't, like in the beginning, they thought, okay, we will attack like the traditional world.
But why Ethereum is not good for this use case, for the wrapped NXM, for example?
Because I think that specifically for that purpose, they want to make sure that no one can change forever this smart contract specifically.
With fork or something like that?
With a fork or with control over the private key that deployed it. Like with Arweave, once you basically publish it, if I understand correctly,
Mhm.
there is no return. Like you cannot go back.
No, you cannot. We're gonna show it. We're gonna do a live demonstration.
Okay.
So we're gonna see it. But that's one of the problems. Like if you store like personal information on that, so it cannot be deleted ever. So that's a risk, obviously, in using this kind of a scheme.
So Arweave is basically a competitor to Ethereum, or it's a different thing, or
it's a totally different thing because Ethereum doesn't. It's not built to store large amounts of data. It's built to store like this. It's not like Bitcoin is built to be a ledger, like a public ledger that is shared amongst. Yeah, and Ethereum is more. You have the execution layer, like the smart contracts and code and everything.
So this is the data
I
layer.
would imagine.
Yeah.
I would imagine
it's
Ethereum.
it's a different layer, and
Yeah, so this is more a competitor to
AWS.
Filecoin.
the Filecoin, yeah.
Yeah, so,
So
like
it's not
Filecoin.
L1 for you.
No.
No, it's
I
all
think-
layer 0 right now.
It's not a blockchain.
But
It is a blockchain.
it is a
It is
blockchain.
blockchain.
It is a blockchain.
Imagine that Ethereum is a computer eventually, okay, and this is like a storage, like the hardware
on
that
top
you
of
have
the-
on top of
on
it.
top
So
of
it could be on top of it, it could be below it. It doesn't matter, but it's like together with Ethereum, they are solving a different problem.
Together.
Yeah.
So now you don't need Ethereum to do the computations, right?
Sorry, Ofer,
Like
what?
that's to do the computations. That's what Redstone are trying to
Yes.
attack,
We,
right?
we're gonna touch. We're gonna touch that. Like the thesis, I think, is it might someday either that will compete with Ethereum, and Ethereum will be like it will be built from different pieces. We're gonna touch that in the end. Like that's the high end of this lecture. So I think like let's move on and see how it is a blockchain. Like the next 2 slides, we'll do the demonstration, then we can talk about the use cases. So just one thing, how can you pay once and store something forever, like economically? So it's a very sophisticated idea that says like storage costs are decreasing each year, historically, at about a 40% CAGR. And they said, hey, let's take a conservative assumption of like 0.5% a year storage cost will decrease in the future. And then you get this, it's called a geometric progression, right? This series of numbers that are decreasing. It's infinite, but if you sum it up, you get to a finite number. So you can say, hey, I'm paying $5 today, and that will be enough to keep like 5 megabytes forever by this scheme. So it's very sophisticated. Like when I've seen, like it's one of the most sophisticated things I've seen. Like the endowment fund is built on this formula, and by assuming that storage costs will go down, you can build a system that stores things like for at least 200 years. That's what they're saying right now. So obviously it's not forever, but
then when you post it, you need to pay the
the
entire
upfront
lifetime of
cost,
it.
yes.
So it makes it like so probably now it's competitive, but if I'm paying in AWS for 1 year, and here I need to pay for 200 years, although it's converging,
Yes.
How can it be competitive when
It will never be as competitive as by definition, but I think it's very surprising that it's quite cheap right now. Like I don't have the pricing.
Probably subsidizing it with block rewards. Also.
No, it's not subsidized at all. It's the real price. We're gonna show it in a while. Like it doesn't cost like storage is super cheap, right? You're getting just from Google. You're getting Google Drive. I don't know like how much 10 gigs for free, right? So storage is one of the cheapest commodities we have today. Like we don't think about it just in the sense of only when you have like these very large amounts of data, it costs a lot of money. But storage is relatively cheap when you talk about this kind of scale. Yeah. So how does it work? That's the technical side, and why is it a blockchain? So the idea here is the Arweave blockweave, that's the name, is a set of data blocks that link previous blockweave history. So the idea is that miners, they block, you can see here on the right, each time you post a transaction to Arweave, you kind of say, hey guys, please save this piece of data. The miners compete with each other to take this data, to store it, and to post it as a new block. But the idea here, which is very unique, is you don't have to store everything. And it works in a way that the next block will be mined, but like by the miner that stores the most information. Like each time you have a new block, you have something which is called the recall block. It's a randomized data that is picked from the history. And the blockchain says, hey guys, whoever holds these pieces of history from the blockchain, the recall block, he can mine the next block. So the idea is the more information you store, the more chances you have for mining the next block and then getting the reward. So it's very similar to Bitcoin mining in a sense, but it has another sophistication layer. Yeah, and that's like, yeah.
No, my question, so doesn't that drive centralization? Because eventually only the large players that can afford a lot of, you showed like the exponential growth of the amount of data. So only if I'm really big, I can store enough. It's like having a mining operation.
Yeah,
Same.
it's the same like Bitcoin.
Yeah, so only if I have like high capital cost, ability to
Yeah, so think about, you can have strategies. So if you have a pool, so you can have, let's say I'm storing like 1/3 of the data on Arweave, and you have these two nodes, and I'm storing the second piece, and I'm storing the third piece, and then we're partnering up, and then we have better chance of
So
mining the next
we
one.
see pools like
Yeah,
that already
yeah.
forming?
Yeah, it's a whole universe in Arweave of complexity of this strategy of the nodes, and they're trying to compete each other. Yeah, definitely. And you have return of scale here, and that's a problem. Like, I don't know, like what the solution right now is. I think like just a year ago they had 100 nodes, and right now they have 1,000 nodes. So
What's the requirement for a node? Is it like intensive?
I think it's the same as Bitcoin, which is not that intensive, but you have to have a lot of disk space. So it's not a game for individuals. You have
So it's like ASICs with a lot of storage.
Yeah. I think the computation part is not the most important. The disk is the part that's important. But you have to have. But it also works on proof of work. So yeah. So you have.
Like it has unique hardware that is suited for Arweave.
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I think it's very similar to Bitcoin in that sense. Like it's a game played by sophisticated players. It's not for the individuals.
Right, but this is just storage. It's more like
But it's also proof of work. Like you're doing both proof of work and proof of access, which is like showing that you hold data.
I would think it's more like Chia or Filecoin, no?
Chia?
No, Chia.
Filecoin, it's different, and Chia, I don't know actually. So I don't know.
Will you talk about the differences later?
I will talk about it briefly because actually Filecoin is very different. It's not a Filecoin is not a blockchain. It's a very different structure. So yeah, I think we can, when we get to the end, I can just mention it.
Is there any criticism about the fact that they are proof of work in basically the most problematic, like,
I think Arweave is so under the radar right now that no one cares at this point of time. But for me, the first question when I see Arweave is like, why no one forks it? It does exactly the same thing with proof of stake. Like,
exactly.
and that's one of the opportunities, I think, because you don't, like you're seeing, we have 1,000 of Bitcoin forks and Ethereum forks, but I think Arweave forks is not something that we've seen yet. And like, it makes sense that we'll see one in the next 2, 3, 4 years. And that's an opportunity. If you can do Arweave, with some kind of an improvement and maybe proof of stake, that's an opportunity. But it takes so long to build these blockchains out. So yeah, I'm not sure why we're not seeing any competition to Arweave in that sense.
So what is the total supply of Arweave? Because we get, like, is it like, okay, I'm not sure because before you said that the rewards coming from the pool that people pay. So
yeah,
is there like a
it's
total
capped.
supply?
It's capped. Yeah, it's capped, and the rewards are paid from the endowment fund.
But the endowment fund should be a zero-sum game, which is like the total amount of what people pay.
Yeah, exactly.
Wait, so in every block, no one is getting more Arweave?
No, Arweave supply is capped. It's
So-
not like Ethereum, which we're having yearly inflation.
No, I understand, but who's minting the Arweave?
It was minted already, and I
Okay.
think I'm pretty sure about that, but you need to check that out. You don't have inflation, so you have. That's why when you look in Arweave, like in market cap, you'll see that.
Yeah, there is 50 million available supply and 64 total supply.
Yeah, the
And-
fully diluted and the not fully the current market cap is pretty close to each other, and that's it.
Yeah, total supply won't change?
No.
I mean,
Unless
in theory, you can change it. The government proposes.
No, I know, but in order to understand, like, if that's their model.
Right now, yeah. Yeah.
So what are they
it's-
thinking about the subsidy after, I don't know, all the Arweave has been?
You don't need to
There
subsidy.
is no subsidy.
There's no subsidy because users are paying for the storage. Like you don't have to pay for inflation. You actually get paid.
It's like a real use case. They have a business model.
I mean, it's the same. It's the same as Bitcoin. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Exactly.
Yeah.
No, it's not the same as
It's
Bitcoin.
exactly the same as Bitcoin.
No, in Bitcoin you mine BTC.
Until
Yeah,
you
but
get
at some
21
point,
million.
the subsidy is gonna be gone.
Yeah, so they just skip that part.
What do you mean keep that one?
They skipped that part. Like in 21.
Yeah, they're already in fully yeah.
Yeah.
Like okay.
Actually, this is an interesting kind of like everybody's talking about Bitcoin security being like uncertain in a long enough time frame because the subsidy won't, continue incentivizing security. And then, this model actually shows that it does.
Yeah.
People are wanting to use the chain here.
Yeah.
They're using it for storage.
Yeah.
Bitcoin, they're using it, to transfer.
So here you actually have an economy because we will see on Solana, like Solana applications are fully integrated into our, and you have like different really cool use cases that probably no one here knows that are already working. So you have a real demand for the R token over time. And yeah, and it's basically a marketplace, right? You pay for someone to store the data, for an infrastructure to store the data forever. I think in terms of like the economic model of the tokens, like we're very early in figuring out like what's going to happen with exactly that model. And
Do you see a point where it will become like impossible, like it will become too expensive to store stuff?
yeah, that's a good question because the platform succeeds so well, and it becomes so robust. So the storage cost just, is high, and that's what's happening on other layer ones. I think at that point you will see competition. You will see another chain that says, "Hey guys, we're going to store forever, but we're doing it more competitively."
There will become strategies like you will not have to store everything. You will decide on a chunk. It will reduce your probability to get a reward, but there will be more. Maybe this what will drive more decentralization that we can.
But I think it's
Shards,
like
for
an interesting question is what happens when the R token is
I think
will cost.
compression will come. That will happen.
Yeah.
It's insane that there are no compression
Yeah.
solutions for.
Yeah. So yeah, you can think about L2s and Starcoin and zero knowledge proof. Like you can get very wild with this idea. But Starkwave. There's a lot of things to develop here. Like definitely, I think the next decade will be very exciting with regards to things you can develop on just on the basis of Arweave. But let's try to continue. So how does it work? We've talked about every miner can choose which blocks of data he stores based on financial incentives, and the whole box together is the perma-web. So, right, the users, they're seeing like all these web pages and data, but back end you have these different nodes, they're storing different types of data. And now you can do a demonstration, a short demonstration. Yeah, so I'm just going to try to share my. Okay, so can everyone see my screen? Yeah. So what we're going to do right now is show like in a very simple way, like how can you save data from your web browser to Arweave and then just fetch it from there. So this is the Arweave wallet. They have like, if I can be honest, it's not the best wallet. They have a few. Yeah, it's very like old and clunky and the UI doesn't look that good, but they have a few other startups that have built wallet on top of Arweave. So, but this is the original wallet they started when they talked about the narrative of saving articles. So I'm I'm through my, I'm entering Ynet and opening my wallet and I'm doing archive this page like it's.
Maybe choose a better page because I don't know if he wants to be there forever.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I will show. Like, I want to do transaction right now because it takes time, but I did it already beforehand. So yeah, so you have the safe mode, which is kind of you're not seeing it here because it's hidden on the right, but you have a safe mode toggle. That
Move it. You can move the.
No, it's not on my computer.
Oh, okay.
Oh yeah, it's on screen. So you have the safe mode toggle that you can hide our personal details. So it won't be stored on the Arweave, and then you're doing archive this on Arweave, and then you're seeing page title and the page size and the feed. So I'm not sure, like it's so small that one Arweave is about $60 right now. So I'm not sure what the amount, but it's probably a few cents. And then you have the balance afterwards, and I'm not going to do it. I'm just going to enter the Arweave Explorer to to show you guys. Sorry. Okay, so Arweave Explorer. Yeah. So this is the block explorer. I'm putting my ID, like my public key, and then this is a transaction I did eight days ago, which is the same. And then I'm entering it, and you kind of see that was I stored the Ynet page on Arweave. The size was 1 megabyte, which is huge. Like thinking about Ethereum transaction sizes, and you can see like I did it from Google Chrome, and that's the URL, and that's the title. And then the coolest thing, I can go inside there and I can open it. And that's from the date, and it just stores the HTML and the JPEGs and the photos and everything, but you can see it right here. So that was, 16th of November. And will be stored forever on Arweave, this page from Ynet.
Just the view without, it's not clickable.
No, it's not. Just the HTML, that's just the HTML and maybe, some the CSS code.
And it's all like a single JPEG, or you can now save any one of them, like does it?
No, the fact that you're seeing it right now says that data, like the JPEG data is stored.
So I mean, like if it's a single JPEG of all the web, or I can go into each of the pictures and right click.
No. It's just I think
it's just the front end. Just like every time you get into
It's
a
a snapshot. It's like
snapshot,
it's like archive.
Yeah.
And I think someone
Like a
asked.
frame.
Someone asked a question in the chat. What happens if one changes the content? So this is a snapshot from the 16th of November. Like, it doesn't matter if they change back. If they change that, that's kind of like saved as a snapshot from it. So.
And all the fees that you paid went to the miner or
to the endowment fund, and then it got split between like the miner, but only a small portion of it, and the other parts will be paid forever based on whoever will replicate this piece of data.
So how much money is there in the fund today?
Oh, that's a good question. I don't know how much money there is in the fund today. I can calculate because if you have, I'm not sure. I think you can take the 30 terabytes that are already stored, and you have to multiply it by some parameter that represents how much.
It's probably presented. It's like
Actually,
it's a number that should grow up.
It's also a question if it's sustainable today, because you have like this limited amount of what people paid, and then the rewards should be financially.
I'm not sure. Like, let me get back at you because it's a great question. Like,
question if they do some kind of incentivization from the treasury, because like otherwise, if it's like self.
No, the endowment fund is a part of the protocol. You cannot touch that. You can't take pieces. You can't take out from it. Like it's just part of the. Like it's like Ether. It's on the protocol layer, right? So you cannot change that.
No, the question is like, let's say you have now $1 million. So if it's, and nobody ever stores anything again. So this should last for eternity for all the people keep the data currently, because this is all there is to. So the question if indeed the cost currently is covering the operation, or there is some kind of incentive mechanism that brings people to be early and do it.
Yeah. I don't think.
I know from Filecoin, I've been working on that, and I think that I was looking for use cases of people paying for storage. And what I learned is that everything is like protocol and incentives currently.
Yeah, so this, I think here, like I'm not sure how they managed to get 1,000 nodes up, but like the idea is you don't have that structure. You actually have users paying for storage. It's a marketplace. And IPFS is very different, and maybe I'll touch it.
So you pay in Arweave tokens,
Yes.
and you get dollars? No, you get Arweave
You get Arweave tokens.
So you get Arweave tokens in the equivalent of dollars
No,
as a miner?
no, I think you.
It's always priced in Arweave?
Yeah, I think it's always priced
So
on
that's
Arweave.
that's your model. They are basically, if you believe in the protocol, you understand that you are getting something very cheap right now.
Yeah.
Compared to the costs of storage out there in dollars.
Yeah, it's the same thing like mining Bitcoin and saying
Exactly.
I'm gonna save the Bitcoin. Yeah, so that's how long are you? Yeah, but you have to cover
You have the
operational.
difficulty that is adjusted, and at any point the difficulty should represent the cost of operating. Otherwise, people go like miners
Yeah,
need.
but here you have supply and demand of like people wanting to store data and
Yeah,
competition.
if it's like matched, then the cost is really what I pay is really what is it costing them to operate the nodes. So
Yeah.
interesting to dive
Mhm.
into.
All right, I have a few answers to dig in later. I'm not sure about all this stuff, but I'll check it out because I want to go to use cases, guys. That's what the infrastructure. I think we all got it. So the first use case is NFTs. Then you have decentralized applications on Arweave. You have layer one storage, smart contracts, and then we're going to go to the CDs, the global decentralized computer. So NFTs on Arweave. So the problem is that you have immutable contracts. So the code itself that generates the NFT is stored on Ethereum, so it's immutable, but the storage is mutable. You're using Amazon S3 or a different kind of storage solution. And the old solution was putting the hash of the content inside of the contract, which is not good because you can still lose the data. And the new solution is permanent storage. So it really makes a lot of sense that like if you want to have provenance for the NFT and you really want to never disappear, so you need to put it on a permanent storage. It's funny because they never aimed for that when they started out with, like it wasn't part of the jargon NFTs, but yeah, they just, when NFTs took off, so they used that and they connected to Solana. You're going to see in a moment.
By the way, I think we should, like NFTs is a general term, like when we talk here on this use case, it's specifically art and collectibles, like visual NFTs. But I think we'll see that NFTs will expand to much different things, and it will be like also viable to use them.
For sure. There's
the music, the sound, the data you keep.
Yeah. Any kind of data that you want to store and like have provenance on and issue it in digital asset makes sense on Arweave. And that's the example of Solana and Arweave. So since August, just 3 months ago, so all of the NFTs on Solana is moved to Arweave. That's about 10 million NFTs right now. And Metaplex, which is one of like the coolest startups on top of Solana, letting you like do like Shopify for NFTs. You can put NFTs as part of your shop, right? As a front end. And so they integrated into Arweave. And here you have the tweet from Anatoly, which is the founder of Solana. He says like 100 NFTs minted on chain, all are permanently backed on Arweave forever, probably nothing. And then you have another thing that's kind of the high end of NFTs on Arweave, and not a lot of people know that, but part of what they are building right now is called atomic NFTs. So right now you have the contract on Ethereum, and you have like the data on Arweave. So they're saying, hey, let's put everything on Arweave. Why should we use Ethereum? They're saying, hey, let's make a smart contract on Arweave, and let's put the JPEG or piece of data on Arweave. So they're trying to say, let's do atomic NFTs. Everything is stored in one place. It hasn't taken off yet, but it makes sense from a technical perspective. But from NFTs, not everything makes sense in terms of like how it is structured and everything. But yeah, that's one of
So just to understand, every layer one that wants to interact with another layer one, they have to move by a bridge. Somehow. Here, basically, if they do only the NFT, they don't have to, right? Because they just need to direct with a link. This saves a lot of like integration costs and time.
Yeah, and it's also much more reliable because you have everything in one place. So that's a lot of. We always think that atomic, non-atomic.
But it's politics, right? Because if people who are developing on Solana believe in Solana, they want like everything.
Yes. There's a lot of politics and capital flows, it's a lot of, it's
at least from my perspective, like Arweave could be very big if they would be Switzerland. Like they should say, we don't care, like develop your own blockchain, we will support you with permanent storage.
Yeah.
Why competing with Ethereum? It doesn't like.
It's a very good point, I agree. It's a great point.
And I think like to add smart contracts to this, like it adds so much complexity because maybe this is the current version that Ethereum is using, this is the current version that Solana is using.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Like after the merge, some things are going to change in the pace of like, I don't know, how smart contracts are using data, reading, writing from Ethereum, like many things are going to change. So it's going to be non-compatible with Ethereum. Like this could happen.
Yeah. Like I think smart contracts, we're going to talk in a bit, they're very, like, it's not similar to what you know on Ethereum at all. It's a very different notion, But yeah, generally I agree like with the idea of not trying to compete with other chains. Like it makes a lot, like strategically it makes a lot of sense. But we will see that you have different use cases for smart contracts specifically on Arweave, which I think is very high end. It's very cool. It's like top notch. No one talks about it today, but it's going to be very interesting in a few years. Yeah. So and that's what we're going to talk today. So smart contracts. Not everyone knows it, but so I'm going to repeat. So the way that smart contract is built on Ethereum is you have all of the nodes are storing this code, and the code says like it has this logic, and every transaction is sent to one of the nodes. So every node does everything. It executes the code, changes the state of the blockchain, and then because the transaction propagates through the network, and you have the execution in each node. So everyone are doing all of the compute. And because you don't have a lot of space to store a lot of data, and because everyone needs to do all of the compute, so it's a very not efficient system. So in Arweave, they kind of took a different approach, which is very interesting. So they said, first of all, you can do JavaScript, which is very easy and everyone knows it, but the execution is not being done on the network, it is being done on the client. So as Idan, I take my personal computer, I tap into Arweave, I can read whichever code is written on Arweave, I can run the software on my computer, and then I can write the new state myself to Arweave. And then you can think about, and then when you think about it, you can have like the most sophisticated data structures that you can think of, like AI, genetic sequencing, everything can be on Arweave, and then you can put it to your computer, you can do the computation on your machine, and then you can write the new state. So that allows you to do very complicated stuff on blockchains that are not being done today, like very high end. And it's one of the things like I'm looking at it, like I'm not really sure about the use cases. Like I don't know, I can figure out like exactly what it will be used, but the technology is very strong. So thinking about,
I mean, yeah. So like this is perfect for ZK proofs, no? Because it's being done individually anyway, and then you transmit the state, and then anyone could confirm that this is, it's very easy to verify, very hard to compute, right?
In some sense, because in ZK proof, you outsource the compute outside of the network, but the goal of it is very different. It's like, you want the execution layer to be outsourced, but you're still doing it when you're doing it on Ethereum, you're still doing it on very simple data, very simple execution, and you have like the idea is the validity proof, the ZK proof is there, like it's the hard part to figure out. But here you can take huge amounts of data, and you can do smart contracts and consensus and all these things like on very complicated data that you cannot do today. And that is very sophisticated, and I think that will be like 5-10 years, like people will start to figure out what we can do with that. But we are seeing smart contracts on Arweave. I will say, like we invested in one company, Redstone, that does a lot of things around that, around smart contracts on Arweave. Yeah, I'll touch them in a bit. And another use case that I want to talk about is L1 storage. So that is one cool thing that Berlin Waters did, and they have built the Solar Bridge, which is basically a way for Solana to offload all of the data from Solana to Arweave. So they have this bridge which is automatic, and then all of the data that is being generated on Solana is just automatically being written on Arweave, which is also very cool. I think no one talks about it today, but again, it's like at some point of time where the Ethereum node will be like, I don't know, 100 terabytes, you will need to offload some of the data to another place. Now it could be that place. This is another use case called bundled transactions. I won't get into it, but you can actually take like, Sam Williams is the founder of Arweave, and he said like, we can take 10,000 transactions, we can put it as a single transaction, it's very efficient, it costs like 37 cents. It's quite, like, I won't get into how it works. And that's the stats. All right, so we're finished with the use cases. And the stats are quite astonishing. So they're currently at about a 12 million transaction per month run rate. We know the markets are pretty crazy right now, so that might drop a bit, but on the long time horizon, I think this number will only increase. And if you think about number of nodes, and that's a very interesting discussion, so you can see that there's about 1,000 something nodes, most in China, which I personally don't know how to explain that. Yeah, I can because it's the electricity cost, but there might be a case that Bitcoin miners, because Bitcoin was banned, they shifted toward Arweave. And maybe
Yeah, so China is also the biggest Chia. So Chia is like a proof of space-time, also uses storage for like blockchain stuff, and they're the biggest ones there. So like all the storage things are being manufactured from China. So I think it makes sense. And yeah, like I'm assuming also some of the Bitcoin mining has transitioned, and everybody's like around that. So like, what's the next thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, I know a bunch of people in China who are doing Chia miners, and then Chia went to like a 1K and then dropped down to like $4,000. And I think maybe some of these people actually moved to Arweave. I mean, it looks like a pretty good bet.
Yeah. Yeah, cool. So yeah, that's definitely something we need to track, like how.
Seems very centralized, though.
It is. Yeah, but it was 100 miners 1 year. Like when I started looking on Arweave, they had 100 miners. So yeah, that it takes time. It takes a few years to propagate the network.
Is there a minimum requirement?
Yeah, we talked about it. Like I think it's like Bitcoin. Like it's not for the individual. It's for sophisticated players with a lot of hardware and capital.
And Idan, what will happen in the future if at a certain point some nodes are shut down? Like with the protocol, will we offer the same blocks?
Yeah, that's a great question, because in that you can theoretically think about a situation where you have like 900 copies of a certain data point is only in China, and then the China miners disappear and you can't replicate it anymore because all of the miners that had it. And then I think that the network will continue to work, but you'll have to bridge a certain time. Like you will have a problem mining the next block, basically. So, and it will take time. You have to fill it with more data until the data that is missing was just a small portion. But yeah, it's like data could be missing. It's not a 100% robust system. It's very innovative. It's very early for the system to work. And yeah, I think like blockchain, when you think about it, like Ethereum, it took like 6-7 years until you really had this big distribution of network. Bitcoin took like 5, 6, 7, 8 years. So it will take time. But I think you have the financial incentive, like people are saying I can make money in doing that. So you have more and more people will just do it. And I think at some point, no one knows Arweave right now, but at some point you might have some, people which can try to fight it. Some people won't like it, probably. Yeah, we're not at that point yet. Like, it's not big enough. And the ecosystem, I just took a snapshot. I'm just going to talk about a few of the apps we're seeing. So you have on the left here, we have Redstone, which we invested, which are dealing with smart, like they're building basically smart contracts on Arweave right now. I think an interesting project that most of us know is Miro. So Miro, which is a publishing platform that competes with Medium, which was funded by S16Z, and we all know them. So all of the data they are generating is being offloaded to Arweave right now, and it's very that's part of the business model. We have Verto, which is a Uniswap on Arweave. I was told very good things about this project. The guy that runs it is like a boy genius, Vitalik style.
So when Uniswap will be shut down, everybody will go to.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they go to Verto. I think the front end will be stored on Arweave. But we haven't really touched that. But we also have tokens on Arweave. I think it hasn't taken off yet. It's part of the smart contracts offering and everything. And Verto is the exchange that will be a part of it. You can go into the website. It's a bit clunky. It doesn't work that well yet, but they had really good advancements in the last.
is it just for storing, or like do you have like dynamic websites that are now like the front end is operated from Arweave?
I think like I don't have an example on the top of my mind, but can you think about a decentralized, like someone
Like
puts
we
it
know
in
that
front-
DXDAO is doing it on their front end, but they're doing it with the IPFS, right?
Yeah.
So do we know if that's, and it's also not that common. Right?
Yeah, it's not very
Yeah,
common.
it's not
To
very
What
oppose.
is it? What are the limitations to get to decentralized front ends?
The limitation is that you don't have, we talked about it internally 2 days ago, the limitation is that you have to have a CDN network, because think about it, like if you want to fetch, like you have the front end on a node that is in the US, right? It will take you a long time to read from Israel.
Yeah.
To read the data from Israel, so you have to have a content distribution network on top, which is also something that is being built.
Okay.
So that's one big limitation. And the second one is, people don't, it's like, why do people use Solana although it's centralized? Yeah, because it works, until the point, it's like insurance, until you don't get hurt, so you don't really care about that. So I think at a certain point of time, we'll see some scrutiny from governments and stuff, and then people will get, say, hey, we have to be careful.
Yeah, there's no need right now to have decentralized websites, but can you map an ENS content hash to Arweave? Has anyone done that?
An ENS content?
Yeah, so like if I go to like whatever alon.eth, it will send me to an Arweave.
That's interesting. I don't think they have integration to Arweave actually. I don't think they have an integration to Arweave, but yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Like that's how people are like, I want to create a decentralized website, like alon.eth.
That's a really good idea.
Yeah.
You should start a startup.
Anyone here wants to?
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if it's a startup. It's like an integration. You could probably get. I mean, for me, ENS, you could probably get 100K for this. Like if anyone is listening.
Yeah, it's a good idea.
Like a
It's
grand.
a great idea. Like, yeah, it's a great idea. I like it. Cool. Maybe I'll talk for 2 or 3 minutes about IPFS. So IPFS is one of the, like, I don't have a slide about that, but that's the largest competitor. It's called Filecoin.
Wait, Filecoin is a competitor, not IPFS.
Yeah, IPFS is the infrastructure, and Filecoin is a competitor, which also have an offering to do like decentralized storage. But the big difference in IPFS, it's not, no one promises you that things will be stored for a long time.
It's not incentivized.
No,
IPFS is not incentivized, but then
it's a marketplace. IPFS is a marketplace where you pay, you have a contract, you say, guys, who want to store my data? 5 nodes say, I want to store your data, you have a contract with them and they're going to pay over time. That's it. And then you have like 5 nodes that are storing your data. It's not like here you have one centralized point, which you say, guys, store my MP3 song, and then everyone competes over storing it and replicating it. So IPFS is just a marketplace. It's a good marketplace, but it's not the same dynamics. And then when people compare it all of the time, it's like it's a wrong comparison, in my opinion. Like,
wait, I have to say something. So IPFS is like, it's kind of like a torrent network. So like it's files, and instead of directories, they have hashes of the files. That's how they're stored, and that's how you don't have duplicity, right? And then you have Filecoin on top of that, so it says, okay, I actually want my this hash, content hash that I uploaded, I want this to be incentivized forever. But you can also take that IPFS, whatever, my image that I uploaded, you can incentivize this in Arweave. Like you can take that file, take that IPFS hash, the URL, and archive that in Arweave.
So they have this integrated, they have an IPFS Arweave integration that does, I think, exactly that.
Yeah. So I think like this is IPFS is like a data storage protocol.
Yeah.
And Arweave and IPFS are competing on incentivizing.
Yes.
Arweave and Filecoin are competing on incentivizing.
So it makes sense if I'm an Arweave node, probably I will also participate in Filecoin because I'm already storing the data. So why not getting rewards from both places?
Interesting if you can do that.
And eventually.
Yeah, but I think at the end of the day, IPFS and Arweave are not, they're not like Filecoin and Arweave are not competitive.
Yeah, Filecoin and Arweave, but Arweave and IPFS are. So this is interesting if you could.
Yeah, I think
if you could, as an IPFS guy.
I think the IPFS it's a different, like they're thinking more about let's map out the internet differently than IP addresses, and like it's a whole big discussion right now. But I think it's a very different vision. Like Arweave store forever, the world's library, immutable. You can store a lot of data, and IPFS is more about like restructuring like the internet.
It'd be interesting to have a session on IPFS and Filecoin.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No?
No, it's your domain.
All right.
This is
Alright.
like this is
I
a
have a
storage arbitrage.
Do you think, like, right now, when they focus on permanent, they are losing, I think, like a big chunk of the market.
Mhm.
Do they have plans to basically say, we can also provide decentralized storage, which is not permanent?
No, like that's their theme. They're doing exactly that. They want to be very focused just on that. And that's why they're outsourcing a lot of the core components like smart contracts
But why?
to startup.
Like, I'm assuming that, I don't know, it's like, I'm thinking out loud.
Yeah.
But most of the storage out there shouldn't be storage forever.
Right. And then you have like gazillion other choices like Google, like AWS, right? So you don't want that's and IPFS also. IPFS you can store things for a long time, which is sort of decentralized because you have redundancy in how much copies you have. But here, like they're saying that also, I think in the vision of the core team right now, which is about 20-something people, like they don't want to expand much more than that. Like they want to really focus on the core feature, which is building the world's library. They're kind of in this Wikipedia narrative. That's what they want to build. Like people want to build on top of Arweave, like NFTs integrations and L1 storage and whatever you want. So yeah, people can, and they will incentivize people to do that. But the core protocol will just be around like permanent storage.
And also, when you speak with normies about crypto, you basically say you own your data.
Mhm.
Sometimes it feels like with Arweave that you don't. Like once you upload this data, it doesn't belong to you. Like you cannot control it, you cannot take it away with you. Perhaps you
Right.
have a link
Right.
somehow from your wallet to
So
it.
this is a bit.
Yeah.
But I understand it's totally different use case. But so I'm like it's a decentralized storage for sure, but it's not decentralized storage that's supposed to give you autonomy on your
Right.
data.
But you can encrypt that. You can put encrypted data on that, and then you have the encryption key, and you can control, whoever has the
You
access.
own your data by you decide who you grant access by giving them, by signing on the request to access the data.
Yeah, but let's say like a lot of like I'm assuming that people will want to sometimes edit stuff or delete stuff.
Yeah, so that's here
Yeah.
it doesn't work, but
Yeah.
I think that what you mentioned, this is like the shift, and this is one of the biggest shifts in Web3, which the entire business models around data are changing from pull to push. In Facebook, I'm contributing content, the content is within Facebook. Once I enter the system, I give them permission to do whatever they want with that, and then I don't have any rights on that. Now GDPR and stuff gives us more control, but in Web3 it will be the opposite. I will have my data vault, and I will grant access to services and products I'm using to access my data.
So that's the Miro business model. Miro says, you can come to my front end. You have this tool. You can publish blogs, but the data is being stored on Arweave. And then if someone else will do it is on front, like will compete with us, you can just take your data and just move to them. And everything, like with the click of the button, like, and they can't change it. That's the holy grail of Mirror, what they are building. Like they're saying, and then you can have, like you have with email, right? You have Gmail and you have Outlook and you have different email clients and you can send messages from one to each other, right? You have competition around who is building the email client. So it's the same thing. It's like protocols, basic protocol. All right, so good discussion. Let's hop to the last topic before we can talk a bit. So this is kind of my personal thesis. I started to think about it, and I would love to hear your opinions. So I think what we're seeing, if we're thinking about going from PC to the cloud, so the personal computer, you have basically the components of compute, disk, and memory, and then when we had better networking, which is the infrastructure for the internet that was built by the big telecom providers during the 2000s. So we could shift the computers to the cloud. And then when we did that, so AWS and Google and all these companies. So they basically they decentralize this computer. They have these different computing sources, and you can buy each one of them separately. And then you have containers and virtualization, which is virtual computers that are very, very efficient in utilizing these assets, right? And that has, all of the SaaS explosion we're seeing in the last decades, it's a lot about that. So you can have a very efficient computer on the cloud, and you can have utilized every single computing resource you have there by splitting up the resources and then introducing things like containers and virtualization, which is virtual computers that are running on the same infrastructure. And then we're thinking about Ethereum. So Ethereum is also a virtual computer. It can read code, it can write a new state, it has its own memory. But today, everything is being done on the same client. So yeah, it's replicated because you had a lot of nodes, but it's a very shitty computer. So, and the thing that got me to think about that, and I talked to Shlomo about that I had in a podcast, some people were saying, hey, Ethereum is a virtual machine, but it has the Raspberry Pi specs. It's a very non-sophisticated computer because it's very slow. And I started listening to Ethereum podcasts by the core team, and they talked about splitting up the virtual machine and the settlement node. And I think we're going to see in the next 5 to 10 years, we're going to see Ethereum core clients split up, and you're going to have different chains or networks for each computing component. And that's on the right bottom, you have the decentralized blockchain set. And that's what we're seeing with Arweave right now, because we're seeing Arweave just becoming this storage layer, and we're seeing startups building on top the consensus layer, which is a compute layer. And then we're seeing the scalability layer. So we're seeing the structure dissolves. And I think, Arweave can have a very important role in this future because they're basically the only ones that can store large amounts of data and have consensus about that. And the thesis kind of says, I'm not sure how it will play out, but anyways, if it play out, you're going to have L2 like Starkware, you're going to have storage layers like Arweave. And I think if this is correct, so Arweave can be a very large component in that future of, again, splitting up the core component of the Ethereum computer. And I would love to hear your thoughts about does it make sense, or have you seen it?
It's interesting. It kind of resonates with what I talked with Yago from Sovereign. He says that they are denominated in, they're an L2 for Bitcoin, denominated in BTC. And his idea was that that network, Sovereign will be like the club you're part of, and they can choose. Now they're using RSK, and in the future they can be on a few other chains or migrate to another chain, if they find something better, or a better layer 2 solution. And they could also use Arweave as an underlying storage. So it will be kind of what you see is Sovereign in terms of user experience, and what you use underneath, under the hood, is different components, and that's already true for Sovereign, and I can see this vision, going and expanding also to other networks.
Yeah, I also think this is a part of the ETH2 vision, right? There's supposed to be beacon chain. There's supposed to be many shards. There's supposed to be maybe a data availability shard, or stuff like that. And this sounds super interesting. Likely, this is. I think we talked about this internally, but the network effects are around the EVM, right? Mm-hmm. It has all the infra. It has from MetaMask to the graph to Infura and stuff like that, and that's what Sovereign is building on as well. They're taking DVM and changing the consensus layer to being proof of work, and then everything is concentrated around EVM, and then I guess depending on how good Arweave will integrate with this EVM and complement the things that are the downsides and the execution layer. Mm-hmm. then yeah, I mean, this could become very big.
Yeah, and like what makes me bullish is that it doesn't matter how you structure it. You will never, in the classic blockchain structure, you will never be able to store a lot of, like Ethereum, it doesn't matter what they do, they will not be able to store a lot of data because
No.
it doesn't make sense that everyone stores everything. It just
Yeah.
doesn't make sense. So you have to have a way to split it up to different nodes.
Yeah.
But you still want the blockchain and decentralization with everything. So like I can't think about any other way except for Arweave there or an Arweave equivalent that I can solve for that.
Yeah, it makes sense from a decentralization perspective, right? You will have the execution layer, you have the data layer, maybe you have like other sort of integration layers.
Yeah.
Wonder if you can have like something like RAM, like a decentralized RAM, which is like super high speed.
Yeah.
Just for execute. I mean, this is not Arweave, but I think we were talking about like you guys that were asking about like super fast availability. So if you can have like decentralized RAM.
Yeah. I know that part of what is2point, like what they're gonna do is they're gonna split up right now you have this Ethereum client that does everything, like the full node. They're gonna split it up, and that's what the Flow blockchain already did. Like they have 4 different kinds of clients, right? The network is built from different kind of. That's exactly that. So they have one for execution, one for consensus, one to validate, all sorts of stuff. So
I think that's also like the Polkadot model. Polkadot has like so many different like.
Yeah. So I'm guessing. I think that's the future we're heading to, and maybe I'll try to wrap up things. But I think, anyways, I feel that this market is in a very early stage. Like we should see more Arweave equivalent. I believe we will see some in the next few years. And I think we can sum things up. So. Few bullet points. Arweave is about you pay once, you store stuff forever. You don't have real competitors today with that value proposition. We're seeing the number of use cases is increasing. Today we have about 30 terabytes held in the network. It's still very small, but it's already 30x from Ethereum. So like in 5 years from now, I can imagine it growing very big. How come no forks? Right? People trying to imitate Arweave, and I expect at least some will be visible soon. And I think the biggest opportunity, and that's what I wanted to highlight, Arweave has an accelerator called the Open Foundry. Everything is open source. You can see that on YouTube. Each week they publish the YouTube videos, and they actually like say, hey, these are the things we want to build on top of Arweave. And I think that's a big opportunity for entrepreneurs to build stuff on. And you can get an investment from Arweave. They already did like 40 investments. I think there are tons of stuff waiting to be built over there. We discussed some of them. And internally, I think as part of Collider, like, we should definitely tap into that and like try to do some work over there. We're already in good touch with Sebastian, which is the COO. Like, Ofer told me to invite him. And I thought like, hey, you wouldn't come because he's too busy and stuff. But I actually sent him an email yesterday. He said like, if I would said a week ago, so maybe he would join. But I think
send in the recording.
Yeah, I will. And I'm not sure you're going to see that, but I think like they're very passionate about like helping people build stuff on top, because that's the phase they're in right now. So they're pretty much done with the base layer building, and now they want to incentivize building on top of the crypto city. So that's about it.
And I'd say that I think Collider Labs, Collider Ventures would also like to support some of the like projects that are building on Arweave. We have one investment, right, in Collider Ventures into the Arweave ecosystem, and we don't hold a position in Arweave. I think that's important to mention.
Yeah, we don't have any liquid position or something like that, just for protocol, right? Yeah.
Any questions?
Yeah, anyone from the crowd has any questions?
Feedback, how was the lecture? Did you enjoy anything for us to improve on next time?
Crickets.
Crickets. All right, so cool. I think we can wrap up. Thank you so much for participating. I hope that it was helpful.
Thank you, Idan, for preparing. It was really interesting and well prepared and well delivered.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
Thanks, Idan. Great job.
Bye.
Bye bye.